Good morning, friends. Good morning. Good morning to you. I'm Brian. I'm the pastor here at Christ United Methodist Church in Waynesboro, and thank you for joining me. Today is Wednesday, April 14th. Today is day 15 of our reading of the Gospel of Mark, the biography of Mark, and I just realized I'm going to have to change that in the description of this video because I forgot to change it before I started. So sorry about that. Hopefully that doesn't cause any, at least not too much confusion. There's probably a way for me to change it during the video, but I'm not sure how to do that, and I'd be afraid I'd lose you while I was doing it. It'd be nice if I actually had somebody else to do that for me, right? Anyway, so today is Wednesday the 14th. It is President accounted for. All right, Marcia, there we go. Roll call. I know we have a few people that aren't a few of our regulars, I should say, who won't be joining us today. But Marcia's here, and I'm here. Looks like somebody else might be here as well. So go ahead and check in. Say good morning. Say hello. Say present. Say whatever it is you'd like to say. That's what that comment stream is for, at least as far as I'm concerned. It's for those kind of things, for us to say hello during this time, especially when we might not be able to say it in person. It's also a good way for you to ask a question or put in your thought or comment, because I'm willing to hear that as well. So I do try to watch those. I've got my multiple screens, so when you see me go like this, it's so I can see the comments, especially the bottom ones, the last ones, the newest ones. I don't always see those comments right away. Sometimes Facebook, for whatever reason, doesn't show me everything. Probably in my settings, probably something I'm doing wrong. But I see them afterwards. So when I do see them, I will respond afterwards. Same thing for text. If you wanted to shoot me a text, feel free to go ahead and do that. 570-351-1619. And I'll do it. I can do it that way. And I try to stay up on that. So if you see me look to my right, it's for my phone. If you see me go like this, it's for the computer's screen. All right, John and Cindy are present. And so is Jolene. Good morning, Jolene. Good to have you folks with us. Like I said, I know some of our regulars aren't going to be here live this morning. Doctor's appointment and travel, mission travel, I should say. We've got a couple of our regulars that are on mission travel. Bill and Pat are left this morning, and Ron left the other day. So I know they'll be watching later on. They'll be watching this in a tape delay, which is fine. I'm so glad that we're, let's look for the blessings of this whole situation where we can find it, right? And it is through this technology, through this idea of remote sharing, remote learning, remote reading, however you want to say it, that you can watch it, participate whatever time you want, whenever is available to you. So although some of you are here with me live, others are watching this recording later. Hey, welcome to you folks too. All right, so let's get down to it, shall we? We've only got 2 days left. Today is day 15. And reminder to self, got to change that in the description. Today is day 15, so there are 2 days left. We've got chapter 15 and chapter 16, and then we'll be done with the biography of Jesus as recorded by Mark. Tomorrow's is a real short one, if you've read it, but we'll probably talk about the multiple endings to Mark, the multiple possible endings to Mark, perhaps is a better way of phrasing that. Been hearing a thumping in my head this morning, and I don't know why. Anyway, it's like the savages are beating on the war drums inside my head. It's probably politically incorrect to say that, but okay. Forget about me. So tomorrow, though, the reminder for tomorrow, I do have a 7:30 meeting. It's scheduled from 7:30 to 8:30, but it depends on how long one or two people might talk. tomorrow during that meeting. So I'm shooting for regular 9 o'clock tomorrow. But if I'm not there right at 9, just be patient. And hopefully you're signed up for notifications and you'll get a little beep when I do go live. But hopefully it'll be 9 o'clock. Okay, so yesterday, just to pick up, just as a reminder, right? Jesus has been arrested. Jesus has been arrested, and they took him before the council. They had that illegal trial at night, false witnesses, not enough witnesses, the whole thing. Mark is pretty clear. This whole thing is wrong by Jewish law. Okay, by Jewish law. We're going to find out something, I think, today. They're very concerned about, they're not concerned, it would seem, about following the Jewish laws regarding Jesus's arrest and trial. So, chapter 15. Very early in the morning, the leading priests, the elders, and the teachers of religious law, the entire high council, hang on. The entire high council met to discuss their next step. They bound Jesus, led him away, and took him to Pilate, the Roman governor. Okay, so pause. So here's Jesus before Pilate with the religious leaders watching. Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus replied, "You have said it." Then the leading priests kept accusing him of many crimes. And Pilate asked him, "Aren't you going to answer them? What about all these charges they are bringing against you?" But Jesus said nothing, much to Pilate's surprise. Pause. He expected a criminal to protest their innocence, whether or not they were, right? You would expect someone to say something to try to save themselves, So he's surprised with the fact that Jesus isn't saying anything. He is staying quiet. Continuing, now it was the governor's custom each year during the Passover celebration to release one prisoner, anyone the people requested. Hang on one sec. I better move myself out of the way so you can see. Anyone the people requested. One of the prisoners at that time was Barabbas, a revolutionary who had committed murder in an uprising. The crowd went to Pilate and asked him to release a prisoner as usual. Would you like me to release to you this King of the Jews?" Pilate asked, for he realized by now that the leading priests had arrested Jesus out of envy. But at this point, the leading priests stirred up the crowd to demand the release of Barabbas instead of Jesus. Pilate asked them, "Then what should I do with this man you call the King of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him!" "Why?" Pilate demanded. "What crime has he committed?" But the mob roared even louder, "Crucify him!" So, to pacify the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He ordered Jesus flogged with a lead-tipped whip, then turned him over to the Roman soldiers to be crucified. Pause. We're going to pause there. So, a couple things. First of all, I did say that they weren't concerned, apparently, with Jewish law regarding this arrest and trial of Jesus, seemingly. Most of it took place at night. Not until chapter 15, where it says very early in the morning, which is probably still before dawn. And again, nothing is supposed to be taking place. Nothing like this is supposed to be taking place. They're not concerned about Jewish law. However, they do seem to be concerned about the Roman law, because the Roman law, although Mark isn't specific, doesn't come right out and say it, It's certainly a hint of that, and the context everybody would understand in the first century when they were reading this. Roman law precluded anyone from from a, from the death sentence unless it was declared by a Roman court. Okay, so the Jewish court would have no right; they would not be allowed to execute a prisoner. Only a Roman court, only a Roman official could make that declaration, could make that sentence, could sign the death warrant. So that they seem to be more concerned with that, with following this Roman law, than with following the Jewish law, scriptural law. And so they take him to Pilate. Now, Pilate seems to be fairly aware of what's going on. He's Mark makes him seem anyway that he's pretty perceptive, and he figures out that it's these Jewish leaders, out of envy, whatever, some sort of an issue with Jesus, but it's not everyone. So he tries to get Jesus released. Mark makes him seem like at least at that point, a decent kind of character. Most of the Gospels would agree with that characteristic, I believe, that he kind of understood what was going on. He figured out what was going on. Now, this custom of releasing a prisoner, historically, there's not a whole lot of proof, a whole lot of evidence that was the case. Other than the Gospels, it's not really stated anywhere. So we're not sure. We just kind of have to accept it based on the Gospels, saying that this release of a prisoner at Passover was a custom of Pilate's. And he gives them two choices. Now, why he picks the one, I don't know. Obviously, the one is Jesus because he's right there. Figures, I know these guys want to get rid of him, but let's see what the most of the people say. So we'll try to get Jesus freed. But for whatever reason, he brings out this other guy who Mark's description, and maybe that's why he picks it, because Mark's description of this guy is pretty nasty, pretty bad, very violent criminal, murderer, and guilty of sedition, guilty of promoting a revolt, trying to get a revolt going, getting one started. So he's someone that Rome would want in prison, right? He's someone that Rome would want in prison. He's someone that Pilate should want in prison. But Pilate has given them the option to, between these two people, figuring everybody's going to want Jesus. But we're surprised that the crowd says, no, we want Barabbas released. Release Barabbas to us. So, something about that name. If you remember from just a few days ago, that there was someone else whose name started with Bar, and says means son of. Said that it means son of. That's what Mark said, and that's what it means. Bar means son of. So Barabbas means son of someone. Maybe you're catching on because you guys are smart. You're not quite as smart as the kids we have around here, because they're the smartest kids anywhere. So although you might not be as smart as them, you could probably you might be able to figure this out. Abbas, because Jesus used that word in yesterday's reading as well. When he was in the garden, he said Abba, Father. So by saying Barabbas, his name means son of the Father, son of God. Son of God. So the crowd, rather than seeking the release of the Son of God, they requested the release of the Son of God. I find that interesting. I just think that's so cool. I think that's cool. All right. So the soldiers mock Jesus. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Hang on. Because because that was a big passage, lots of stuff going on there. And Pilate has Jesus whipped. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about a whip, I often think of a bullwhip, like Indiana Jones, right? So it's this leather thing, maybe with a wooden handle, old style, wrapped up in leather thongs, and probably divided at the end with strips of leather, cut into strips of leather on the end, maybe, tapered down, so pretty pointy. And that thing's got to hurt. That thing's got to hurt. But Mark is pretty specific. Mark gives that extra detail. Not only is it a leather whip with fingers on the end, right? With those fingers on the end, those strips of leather on the end. Each one has a piece of lead attached to it. Each one has a piece of lead attached to it. This is very descriptive of the type of whip that was used. And it's not just, we're not talking a ball of lead. Archaeologists and historians would describe it as almost like hooks, The lead has been forged and formed into almost like hooks. So it's gonna a basic leather whip is going to hurt, it's going to sting, it's going to open flesh, but not like this. This is the kind of whip that will literally rend skin from bone. All right, let's get rid of that picture. We don't need to see that. The soldiers took Jesus into the courtyard of the governor's headquarters, called the Praetorium, and called out the entire regiment. Probably an exaggeration. They dressed him in a purple robe, and they wove thorn branches into a crown and put it on his head, probably forcefully. Then they saluted him and taunted, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck him on the head with a reed stick, spit on him, and dropped to their knees in mock worship. When they were finally tired of mocking him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him again. Then they led him away to be crucified. A passerby named Simon, who was from Cyrene, which is a city in northern Africa, was coming in from the countryside just then, and the soldiers forced him to carry Jesus' cross. Simon was the father of Alexander and Rufus. Pause. We don't know who they are, right? Mark throws in this detail, the father of Alexander and Rufus, which, of course, for us doesn't mean anything. We can suppose, and most commentators do this, that Rufus and Alexander were fairly prominent by this point in time, by 70 AD, perhaps well known in this early Christian community, perhaps leaders in following the way and following Jesus, either probably not there in Jerusalem, but in one of the surrounding communities, or even as far away as Cyrene. Don't know. We don't know. But they kind of, why else would Mark put their names in there, right? It really doesn't mean much. He could have said he was a father of a couple of people, but even that doesn't really mean much. So the fact that he's giving them names tells us that they were probably important at the time. And so we can celebrate that without truly knowing why or who. Okay, continuing. And they brought Jesus to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. They offered him wine drugged with myrrh, but he refused it. Pause. So Golgotha, your translations might say something different. Your translations might say Calvary, and we often talk about Calvary, and songs talk about Calvary. It's the same place, Greek versus Latin. Okay, Greek versus Latin, and actually the Hebrew is pretty close to the Greek. They're a similar word. Probably a transliteration. meaning it originated in one language and couldn't really translate it into another language, so you mostly adopt the first language's word. When you read Calvary or Golgotha, it's the same place. It's just Greek versus Latin. Place of the skull, or it could just mean skull. Again, not 100% sure. So maybe it looked like a skull. There's different explanations for why it was called that. Some say it's this mountain that looks like a skull, or at least did, whether or not you see it. There's also a tradition that says that there are skulls buried there. There's a tradition that says the skull of Adam was buried there, was found and buried in that location. So there's all these different stories. Doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. They offered him wine drugged with myrrh, but he refused it. Myrrh, of course, you can remember the story from Matthew that myrrh was one of the gifts of the Magi when they came to see the young child. But myrrh is a medical thing, which is why the Magi gave it. It's symbolic of Jesus's healing mystery. But here, one of the qualities of myrrh is that it is an anesthetic. It can help numb the pain and cause a person to relax and those kind of things. So whoever was offering that was actually fairly kind to Jesus. Or perhaps they just wanted to kind of get things over with quickly. We're not sure, but even that is a little bit kind to Jesus. But Jesus didn't want it. Jesus didn't want it. Okay, next. Then the soldiers nailed him to the cross. They divided his clothes and threw dice to decide who would get each piece. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. A sign announced the charge against him. It read, "The King of the Jews." 2 revolutionaries were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Pause. Okay, so the New Living Translation says revolutionaries. Yours might say just criminals. Ooh, excuse me. The Greek word that is used there is symbolic of someone who commits crimes through violence. So they're not basic scofflaws. These guys didn't jaywalk, or something like that. They didn't even just like rob a house when nobody was there. They are criminals who use violence to commit their crimes, and murder is not beneath them. They would be willing to do that. So to be more descriptive, and I would say even more accurate, New Living Translation might stretch it a little bit, but say revolutionaries. They're violent criminals. They're willing to be there with Jesus. Now, this image that I have here showing Jesus on the cross along with the 2 criminals is probably fairly, it's probably the image that usually comes to your mind, and it's a depiction of the scene that we often see in artwork and stained glass windows and stuff like that, right? So Jesus, they're high up on a cross, and kind of towering over all the people. That's probably not accurate. I could not find a depiction that was really good. This one is probably closer to how things were. Okay, but still, again, it's on a 2 nice squared off pieces of wood, which is possible. But the Romans did so many executions, so many public executions, so many crucifixions. They would have run out of wood, especially if they didn't reuse them, right? And so a lot of them were probably just heavy branches nailed to a tree, literally a tree. So like pick one of these trees off here, and a branch was just this heavy beam or branch was nailed to it. Not to say that, some of them looked like this, and Jesus's might have, but it's actually more likely that it was just into a tree that had an opening big enough where they could do that, and hung them there to die. Okay, so this is a little bit closer to the reality as far as height. As far as height, um, they weren't far off the ground. They weren't far off the ground. I mean, think about all the work that it would take really for the Romans to do it. And if you're executing in some cases 100 a day, that's an awful lot of work to boost them up so high. So it's more likely that they were much closer to the ground and much closer to the people. You can see here, and even they're probably farther away than they would have been able to be. They would have been closer. They would have been closer. The other thing I want to mention, again, something we often see in artwork, but archaeologists and scientists tell us it wouldn't have been that way. They often show the nails through the palm of the hand. Um, doesn't say that in scripture, at least not that. I don't think so. I think it just says through the hands. It wouldn't have been through the palm. Wouldn't have been through the palm, because if you put a nail through the palm, there's not much to stop the nail from just from the body. The weight of the body against that would just slide right through, right? So more likely, it would have been up here through the wrist, in between the ulna and the radius, and the carpals and metacarpals, right? Carpals, metacarpals, for all those bones and that tendon and sinew, et cetera, to hold it in place. That would work. All right. So when you see it in the palm of the hands, it's an artist's rendering. Really wasn't like that. I would say almost worse. Right through here. The other thing that looks good. Oops, that one hit on me. But that's all right. That's all right. Because the other thing is the idea of a nail straight through the feet probably wasn't like that. It was much more likely through this, because this is an actual. This came from an ossuary, which is a bone case, something you stored bones in. We use coffins, of course, for a whole body, but they would put people in a tomb, and after a number of years, after the time when all the flesh and stuff had deteriorated and been consumed and um, decomposed, all the decomposition had taken place, they would then reuse the tomb. But in order to do that, they would remove the bones and they would put them in a box, an ossuary. So this came from an ossuary that dated to the 1st century, in the Middle East, Roman. And you can see this is a long nail through a heel. So the nail wouldn't have gone straight through the front of the feet. Let's picture nails going through the heel, through the side of the bone, through the side of the tree or cross piece. Okay. Ouch, 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 ouch. All right. That's probably more than you wanted on a Wednesday morning, right? A little bit more descriptive. While you're having breakfast, you probably didn't want that. So continuing, at noon, darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. Then at 3 o'clock, Jesus called out with a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you abandoned me? Some of the bystanders misunderstood and thought he was calling for the prophet Elijah. One of them ran and filled a sponge with sour wine, holding it up to him on a reed stick so he could drink. Wait, he said, let's see whether Elijah comes to take him down. Then Jesus uttered another loud cry and breathed his last. And the curtain in the sanctuary of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. When the Roman officer who stood facing him saw how he had died, he exclaimed, this man truly was the Son of God. Pause. This man truly was Barabbas. So the curtain in the temple, this would be a reminder from those of you who joined me for our journey through Exodus. This would be the curtain that separated the Holy of Holies from the rest of the temple, and only the high priest was permitted to go behind that curtain, behind the veil, and usually, I think, only once a year for Day of Atonement. For Day of Atonement, that would have been the place where the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat were, and so that was considered to be God's domicile. That's where God lived. That's where God was, in the temple. So one of the ways of interpreting this, understanding this tearing of the curtain, is as a metaphor of God leaving the throne to be with his son, at his death, at his execution. Mostly we interpret this as understanding, because this curtain would have been very thick, like we estimate about 4 inches thick, or up to 4 inches thick, and possibly like 80 feet tall, 80 foot long. You're not going to tear it. You're definitely not going to tear it from the bottom up. This gets torn from the top down. So it's this tearing of the veil, the separation between God and humanity is no longer there. That God has taken it away. Continuing, some women were there, watching from a distance, including Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James the Younger and of Joseph, and Salome. They had been followers of Jesus and had cared for him while he was in Galilee. Many other women who had come with him to Jerusalem were also there. This all happened on Friday, the day of preparation, the day before the Sabbath. As evening approached, Joseph of Arimathea took a risk and went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Joseph was an honored member of the High Council, the Sanhedrin, and he was waiting for the kingdom of God to come. Pilate couldn't believe that Jesus was already dead, so he called for the Roman officer and asked if he had died yet. The officer confirmed that Jesus was dead, so Pilate told Joseph he could have the body. Joseph bought a long sheet of linen cloth. Then he took Jesus' body down from the cross, wrapped it in the cloth, and laid it in a tomb that had been carved out of the rock. Then he rolled the stone in front of the entrance. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where Jesus' body was laid. End of chapter 15. So this is an image of what is called the Garden Tomb. It is, it's just traditional location. We don't know exactly where Jesus' body was laid, where the tomb was, but this is near the site of Jesus' execution, or presumed the site of Jesus's execution. And so many, many years ago, this became known as the Garden Tomb. The Garden Tomb. And even if it's not Jesus's tomb, we can have it does give us some understanding of what his tomb looked like, because it is a first century tomb. Okay, so it's accurate from that point of view. Now you can see right here, this is basically like a trough behind which the rock would sit, and it would be up here off to the left, and would have another rock holding it until you put the body in. Then you knock the rock out of the way, and the stone would roll down this little thing to here. You could probably brace it into place, but it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. That's how that would have worked. That's how it would have worked. And I'm looking forward to seeing this in person, hopefully, anyway, in October. And you're welcome to join me. Still time to sign up for that trip to Israel, to the Holy Land. And this is one of the stops. Anyway, I don't think you're actually allowed to physically go in, but I think you could at least lean in, so to speak. I'll let you know, or you can come find out with me. So that's it for chapter 15. That's it for chapter 15, day 15 of our journey through Mark. We've got one more to go, folks. One more to go. Chapter 16 tomorrow, Thursday the 15th will be day 16. All right. So thank you, folks, for joining me, either live or some other time. I pray this time has been beneficial for you, that God has spoken to you through something you've read, through something I've said, as you go about your day, as you go about your life. Don't be like those disciples of old. Keep your eyes and ears open to what God is doing in your life and the life of those around you. When you see it, say, thanks, Papa, and then tell people about it, including me. Until then, my friends, be blessed. Be blessed.